No, just bending over. Oh, good morning. Excuse me. Good morning and welcome to the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting and work session for March 19, 2019. I'm Commissioner John Hutchings, and to my right is Commissioner Ty Menser. To my left is County Manager Ramiro Chavez, and over here on the far right, my far right, is La Bonita Bomar, the clerk of the board. And we have et al. In the audience in the gallery. To be specific, Megan Porter, our PIO supervisor. Yeah, got it. Thank you. So what we're going to do is follow the Tuesday, March 19th BOCC agenda setting for this afternoon at 2 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Menser and approval of the agenda and the minutes. Then we move right into presentations, and we have an introduction of the new Information Technology Director.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. This afternoon, I will officially introduce Mr. Dennis Osorio. He is our new Informational Technology Department Director, and I will give Dennis an opportunity to introduce himself and say a couple of words, and vice versa for you to welcome him officially.
Very nice.
To the county.
He's a nice guy. And then move into, any questions, comments about that? Okay. Move into opportunity for the public to address the board. Are we aware of anything?
Yes, perhaps Mr. Pettit may come this afternoon. He submitted another letter this morning, which later on the agenda will touch base on the details of that letter. So he might be coming and addressing the content of the letter that he submitted this morning.
Okay, we'll touch on that later this morning.
He had a letter last week.
Yeah.
Which we hadn't, so we're a letter behind, right? Because I don't remember addressing the previous letter.
Well, we'll touch base on it.
Okay.
We have a number 6. I'm sorry, number 4, Commissioner.
Number 4. Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. Any other issues that we suspect the public may want to comment on?
No.
Are you aware of any?
No.
I'm not either. Okay. Then move into the county manager's update.
Yes, this afternoon.
Actually, I do. If you remember, our SWAC chair, Michael Stedman, started reading a statement, and he ran out of time. He said he'd be back this week to finish it.
Oh, did he?
I don't
Did
know
he
if he
submit
will or-
comment?
No, he didn't submit comments.
Okay.
I got an email kind of finishing the statement, which I can forward. I just saw it last night, but I think he intends to kind of continue his testimony from last week.
And this might be a good opportunity related to the SWAC. I will be attending the next SWAC meeting. And at the last meeting, the SWAC committee decided to assign work to the Director of Public Works, which
What? I'm sorry?
That's not appropriate. That's
Yeah.
not their purview.
Yeah.
So I'm planning to attend the SWAC meeting next time, and I will have a conversation with the board as to their purviews to advise the commissioners and not to assign work to county staff. So I just want to let you know that's what I'm planning to do, and I will report back as to how that goes.
Okay.
I'm still in the process of drafting the letter, response letter to the letter that you received from the chair and the vice chair. And as soon as we get the additional comments from Mr. Stedman, I will incorporate on that letter some of the response comments.
All right, thank you.
Right.
We'll move into agenda item number 3, consent items A and B. The first one, Superior Court approval of a request for qualifications.
And the county manager's comments?
What's that?
County manager's update.
Certainly, yeah, please.
I have a couple updates this afternoon. Mr. Sharon Matthews, she has been involved on the Historic Commission since 1988. She recently passed away, so I'd like to highlight this afternoon and thank her for the service she has provided to Thurston County. And also, I will follow up with a couple of comments. Again, Mr. Pettit, I don't think we're going to be ready to address Mr. Pettit's comments. I already addressed most of the content of the last week's letter. This week's letter is a little more a different issue. So I mean, I'll be ready to address that this afternoon. You also received public testimony from Mr. Durker.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what he was requesting, so I'm not sure how we're going to be responding to that, but at least I'm going to acknowledge that we have received those comments.
Okay.
And also you received public testimony from Mr. Wright, and he was making a request related for you to consider adding to the document process amending the county code related to biosolids. I had a brief conversation this morning with Mr. Wright, and he said, have the commissioners decided to put in the document process? I stated to him that that's premature because the decision as to what items go into the document process is a different process. We're just starting going through that process with the commissioners, and you will, the board, will consider what items should be in the document process based on the many different priorities that you have across the county. I will address on those terms this afternoon, and he was satisfied for now.
So you had the conversation this morning with him? Will he be coming today?
I don't know if he will be coming.
Okay.
Are biosolids used anywhere in the county, or was this young thing a first?
So there's a
proposal?
I think it's chapter 24 of the Thurston County Code that addresses biosolids. You may recall his testimony was he made a public records request because within the code outlines that we need to have a near local agreement with the Department of Ecology to address biosolids projects. We never had one because this is so unusual to come, really, and at the end, it's really the Department of Ecology who issues the permits on those type of projects. We don't have a local agreement, but he is making a request for you to include that to tighten some of the regulations related to biosolids in the county. So, did I answer your question?
Not really. My question was, it sounds like that they're not, because we haven't gotten to the process.
No.
So I was just curious if we're really
to be honest
dealing
with you, it's the first time that I've seen a biosolid project, and all of you have been involved in that. So, and again, the county really doesn't permit those because it's we
bigger
do
than
have
us.
in the code.
So the people so the first proposal was a particularly poor selection site.
Right.
All right.
Okay. Anything?
No, I do think the issue on that one was that we were never even notified that that was going to take place or had any chance of taking place while it was developing. That was the unfortunate thing.
Yeah, but it's a good question, though. Does the county, or should the county, have something on
Well,
biosolids?
I think they should, if there was a way that we should, if there's a way that we can come up with that authority. I guess that's the issue. Who does have the authority? I would think the Board of Health could have some authority over that, but I guess that's for our legal counsel to decide.
So the Department of Ecology permits the activities, and what the code that we have, we allow within the land use to occur those activities. It's similar to gravel mining. As you go through the process in a code amendment to allow in certain areas of the county gravel mining, for instance, right? But we don't permit the activities. Is the Department of Natural Resources who permits those activities. So it's a different layer. Is we allowed on the county versus on the land use, but it's the state agencies who permit certain activities. And that's what we've seen. So Title 24 of our code allows for biosolids, but we're not the agency who permits those activities.
Yeah.
That's a little bit
What would it be
different.
if we didn't allow it? What would be the outcome if, under that same title, we just said no?
Well, that will be under your consideration to include that in the docket.
And then would that carry the force of law, though? Then they'd have to go somewhere else?
Well, this is, I believe, is a land use issue, so that will be a conversation we need to have with our attorneys.
I'd like to hear what the attorneys have to say about that.
Well, before you get to the point, Commissioner, you need to address whether you like to include this on the docket.
Well, I don't know if I want to include it on the docket if it doesn't do any good to include it.
Well, it's difficult. With all due respect, it's difficult for me to get to a conclusion as to how this process should go, and then ask a legal question of a conclusion that we don't know what the outcome is.
See, and even though the state allows it, we can be more restrictive, but we can't be less restrictive?
I can answer those questions, Commissioner, at this
Just a
point.
rhetorical question.
Yeah.
For example, the LCB, Cannabis Board, they allow this, but we can be, regarding land use, we can be a little more restrictive,
Yeah.
but we can't be less restrictive. And I was wondering if it's the same thing. I'm wondering
Yeah.
if it's the same thing.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and that's probably, you got the sense of,
Yeah.
how that is.
Well,
Yeah.
from my perspective, I don't expect you to be able to give us an answer, but we do have counsel.
Well,
And
right.
I would like to pose the question to council, so then we'd know whether we're just spinning our wheels or not, if we move forward and tie up staff on a docket issue that really doesn't matter. So I think it's very important that we find out the legal ramifications of doing one thing or the other.
Well, the thing is, if I may, you are concluding on an outcome without having a public process. And that's what you asked me to ask the attorneys to weigh in on a decision that you're making right now without having a public process to go through in the docketing system process. So that is my concern.
Okay, well,
It's
my
a-
concern is not this same as yours. I think we need to find out, would we have any authority if we were to put this on the docket and do something about it?
What are the bounds of what options do we have?
Yes.
The range.
And I think that's going to take some legal advice.
I will do my best to answer that question because
Thank you, sir.
I still don't
Thank you.
understand it.
Do you have more for county manager update?
No.
All right, so now we're moving into consent items, A and B. And A talks about a request for qualifications for Title 26. Again, this is regarding guardian ad litem, but we discussed this last week because Title 26 is different than this Title 26, the county Title 26.
Yes, this is a
legal or
court mandate.
court.
Yeah. So for your consideration, Superior Court would like for you to issue a request for qualifications for the 2019 Garden Ad Litem program. And also during this process, they would like for you to consider to extend the current contract until April 30, 2019. That will give enough time to go through the RFQ process and develop a new contract.
Okay.
That is really the gist of this item.
All right. Go ahead, Gary.
For clarification, is this an RCW Title 26?
Actually,
Yeah.
this is a different,
This is-
different
I
title.
think it'd be worth referring to that because we have a code Title 26
Yeah.
and RCW.
Rather
To
than
keep the
county.
public from being confused on the topic.
Yeah, we'll address that.
Do you have anything on that?
Just, these are, yeah, just to clarify, these are custody investigations in family law matters.
Anything more, Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Okay. 3B, the voucher list, and I've gone through it. I imagine my seatmates have. Any questions on the vouchers?
No.
Nope. Okay. Department items number 4, auditor, public hearing, change precinct boundaries.
Yes, this is a request for you to set a public hearing for April 9, 2019 at 3 p.m. in this room with intent for you to take public testimony for proposed modifications to precinct boundaries. The changes are mainly administrative. This is a result of adjusting the boundaries as a result of the annexed areas that have occurred in the past. You requested the auditor's office to come and give you a little more information related to these proposed changes. So on your agenda later on, they will be coming and give you additional information related to this proposal.
Okay. Anything?
Later on this morning?
Today's item number 1.
Oh, this afternoon.
No, this morning.
Morning.
This morning. I see. Got it.
Anything?
Okay.
Department item number 5, juvenile court probation, Heartstrides Ranch peer support program contract.
Yeah, you also reviewed this item. This item is aligned with Strategic Initiative I-10. And this is for you to consider awarding a contract to Heartstrides Ranch. with juvenile court for the amount of $53,120. And this is for the period January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2018. And this program provides equestrian assisted peer support for juveniles involved in the juvenile court system. The $53,120 will be covered on via TST, the treatment sales tax, and is already included on the 2019 budget.
Okay, anything?
Good.
Number 6, central services, and this is the Tilly Road HVAC.
Yeah, you also review this item, and procedurally, you need to approve closing the contract. In this particular case, this contract was to build some damper control in the public work site at the Tilly campus. And the contract was given to Capital Heating Cooling of Lacey. This company met all the requirements and the specifications of the contract, and if staff is asking for you to close it. Last week, you had a brief conversation as to what this project was supposed to address. And really was related to control some of the flies that come into the building. Also, you had a conversation that perhaps if this project will address entirely this issue, not necessarily, but certainly has helped quite a bit in addressing the fly issue. Also, we had a discussion that perhaps on the road, staff is going to bring some options for you to consider delegating some of these administrative steps to either the county manager or the director, which now may expedite the time.
I see on here that Michael Crow will be here. Will our Public Works Director be in attendance also for that? Okay, good, thank you. Any questions on the HVAC?
No.
Okay, and item 6B, final acceptance of facilities engineering project.
Yeah, this is related to a contract that we had here at the courthouse campus related to security upgrades, including cameras and some other elements to address security. This contract was issued to Benchmark Electrical Services of Olympia. And again, this outfit already met all the specifications and requirements outlined in the contract, and staff is requesting to formally close the contract. Both items 6A and 6B are aligned with initiative number 16 of the Thurston County Strategic Plan.
All right. Questions?
Good.
Anything? Item number 7, Community Planning and Economic Development, or CPED.
Yeah.
Emergency Housing Ordinance.
This is a brand new item, and later on item number 2 of today's agenda will have additional information related to this. And this is for you to consider a public hearing to set on May 7, 2019 at 3 in the afternoon for you to take public testimony and take an emergency ordinance related to housing, related to homelessness and land use. So. And again, this is setting the stage for you to take public testimony. Item number 2 of today's agenda will dive a little more in detail as to what this emergency ordinance is going to do.
And May 7th, that's a Tuesday, I believe, isn't it?
Is a Tuesday.
6, 7, okay. All right, anything? Go ahead.
What does this mean when it says interim regulations?
Because it's an emergency, is an interim, that gives you the latitude. Because if you were to enact in a formal, the process is a little bit lengthier and requires additional public outreach.
When we're done with the enactment, does it become permanent, or is
No,
it going to be interim?
so think about this in terms of the interim marijuana regulation. So
Okay.
you enact an
Okay.
interim,
Good enough.
see how it works, and in this case, we'll give you an option to extend that to another 6 months. There's a little bit of a difference because before you extend for another 6 months, you need to held another public hearing because of the conditions of this emergency.
Do you have anything on that? We do have our operations manager, Jeremy Davis, in the house.
No, I'm glad that you asked that question because I was misunderstanding that, but I think I got it.
Yeah, and later today we'll get a little more in detail as to what this ordinance is going
Okay.
to do. was planning to do.
Agenda item number 8, commissioners and county manager items, where we discuss important stuff, important to us anyway. And then we will adjourn that meeting, move right in at 3:30 or thereabouts to the Transportation Benefit District. And that will be turned over to Commissioner Menser, the president of the TBD.
All right. I don't see anything on here that wasn't on last week's run-through, so I'll go quickly because I know we have a long agenda for this morning. At 3:30, it'll be called to order. We'll approve the agenda and meeting minutes from November 20th. The opportunity for the public to address the board will then occur. And department items then starts with 3A, Public Works. Ratify the election of the TBD officers for 2019.
Correct. Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director.
That sounds straightforward.
It is, yes.
Anything to add there? Okay. Then we would go to 3B, this is a Public Works laden agenda. They will then present 2018 TBD annual report.
Yes, so we'll go through the activities that we accomplished in 2018, which is also a requirement of the TBD itself.
Questions about that? Good.
No.
C, Public Works, presentation of Public Works Transportation System, 2018 accomplishments and 2019 planned projects.
Yes, so I talked at last week's agenda setting that the Transportation Benefit District, we're trying to take a broader approach. So we're going to talk about transportation as a whole, transportation regionally, and what's going on with that. And then we'll have specifically this agenda item, this agenda item is what we actually accomplish, our capital improvement projects for transportation in 2018, and then those projects that we have planned for 2019.
Yeah.
So as a matter of clarification, the 2019 projects, they are funded, proposed funded by the TBD, they're just placeholders. So those will not move forward if the TBD doesn't enact any funding strategy.
Correct, and so
clarification on that.
Yeah, these specific items are the transportation system, so not projects that would be funded by the transportation district. These are specific projects that we have accomplished in 2018, and that
We,
will,
meaning the county.
Public Works, the county, yes, and that we're planning for 2019.
Giving us a broader overall
Correct.
idea of what's going on, not necessarily TBD specific.
Correct, because we went through a lengthy process last year talking about what we could do with the TBD, what those projects would be. And so as I mentioned, we really want to kind of elevate that a little bit and say, okay, well, here's what we've actually done at the county level for transportation. Here's what it looks like regionally. And then we can start talking some more specifics again about the TBD.
Okay.
Will we get into...
Commissioner Edwards.
As, I don't know if this is applicable, but maybe you could get the answer to this question anyway. Between, the county has paved between Four Corners and Lindsay Road on Vale Road. And I think it was done in 3 different sections. And I see it's relatively new, but one of the sections is getting that alligator breakup all through it for that whole section of road.
Okay.
Could you just let us know the dates that maybe those 3 projects were completed? And then my question might be, well, isn't that breaking up rather soon? And maybe we need to discuss why, or if something needs to be done about it.
Sure. I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Will the 18 overview, will the 2019 of things yet to come, will it be what will be done or what won't be done because of the lack of funding? Will that be broken up?
This, for tonight, it will be what we are planning to do in 2019. What the county
What the county's planning?
is planning, what is on our capital program for transportation improvement
So it's the
program.
wish list. It's not just what can be done with the current funding that we have. It's just the wish list, which some of it might be done and some might not be done.
No, this will be what we are planning to accomplish
Planning
in
to do, okay.
2019.
That's funded
With,
then.
with other funding sources.
It's
That is
funded.
correct.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yes. We, of course, will highlight all of the things that aren't getting done as a
Okay.
result of a lack of funding, but we also want to talk about what we are getting done.
Good, thank you very much.
Yep, Mr. Edwards.
Might you be able to comment on what we are not getting done because we are diverting, I want to say about $4 million out of the road fund to address other governmental needs? Might you be able to comment on that?
Yes. I think we commented on it last year several times. We will continue to comment on it, yes.
Then it would be, ready? I think it would be important also then to say, if it's not getting done because of the diversion, it's also not getting done because there's no influx of money into the Transportation Benefit District.
Correct,
That would fund that,
correct.
okay?
Yeah, I think it will be good to address that since we have a brand new makeup of the board.
Okay,
So bring that information again, that would be helpful.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. 3D is next, and it's Public Works Department presentation by TRPC, the Thurston Region Planning Council, State of the Regional Transportation System.
Yes, so this will be a broad overview of the issues that are happening right now in our region as it pertains to transportation. So we've talked a lot about Thurston County, we talked a lot about that last year, and now it's elevating it a little bit and saying, okay, what's going on in our region? What are some of the challenges that we have?
Who's making that presentation?
Karen Parkhurst?
Great. Questions on that?
No, no.
No. Okay, and then the final item under department items is Director's Report from
Yes.
Ms. Walker.
Yes, so I'll talk a little bit about what our plan is for the upcoming meetings for the Transportation Benefit District and get some feedback from you on what else you might like to hear about. I also will provide an update on Initiative 976, which is the $30 car tab, which is what I was asked to provide at the last agenda setting. And then I'll make note of what are some of those things that aren't being accomplished as a result of the TBD not being funded and $4 million being shifted or diverted from the road fund.
Questions?
No.
That's it. We adjourn and move along.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. And moving along, we're moving to the agenda for next Tuesday, March 26, 2019. Meeting will be called to order at 2 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Menser. Again,
Again?
we're doing it back to back
Okay.
because I will not be here on the 26th. And so actually, Commissioner Edwards will be running the meeting. Do you want to go through the agenda yourself?
No, sir, you can
Okay.
continue right on.
Then we'll approve the meeting minutes, the agenda and the minutes. Move on to the opportunity for the public to address the board, and it's going to be a bit premature, perhaps, to know
Perhaps.
what they might be commenting on. The county manager's update as well, premature. And then agenda item number 3, consent items A, B, C, and D. A is the Sheriff Lawrence Lake Regatta.
Yeah, this is
application.
your yearly request to approve allowing Seattle Inboard Racing Association to hold an event in Lawrence Lake from April 27 and April 29, 2019. They have submitted all the necessary documentation to the Sheriff's Office, and they have already paid the $500 fee associated with this event.
All right. Questions, comments?
Is this something that happens every year, or is this, okay?
Yeah.
This has been
And-
happening every year for at least 40 years.
Yeah,
or
and,
maybe 50 years.
And you may see the pro later in the association or the sponsor of this event may hire the Sheriff's Office to provide some additional oversight, and that is a different step.
That's where I was going. They pay for that.
Yeah, they pay for that.
Yeah.
And any deputies involved in this event will be on an overtime basis. They will not be taken away from their daily duties.
Got it. 3B, Central Services, a resolution reclassifying a position.
This particular reclassification is for your consideration to go from the capital project manager 2 and the capital project manager 3. The impact to this request is going from $7,750 to $8,508, and just about an increase of 9.78%. So later on the agenda, you have on item number 3, this is the flex unit related to the expansion of the jail. This particular classifications, you may know the project manager resigned 2 weeks ago. And when we had the conversation with you, you authorized me to hit the pause button. And as a result of hitting the pause button on this project, we assessed the qualifications of the project manager. And the capital project management 3 requires more qualifications and skills that will be beneficial to the success of this project. For instance, the capital project management 3 requires a certification as a project management professional, a PMP. And I believe that is what we need on this project, which we did not have in the last few months. So this item is related to the flex unit.
Okay. Anything?
No.
3C, Human Resources, reappointments to the Thurston County Citizens Commission on Salaries for elected officials.
Yes, this for your consideration is to reappoint Mr. Bill Arland as a District 1 representative and Rachel Morris as a District 2 representative for the Thurston County Citizens Commission on Salaries and for elected officials. Their term will end March 31st, 2023.
All right.
They have both put in for.
Yes, they have both requested.
Anything? Nope.
And,
All right.
and as you know, this selection is a little bit different than other boards and commissions, because I recommend for you perhaps to be a little more distant from looking in the qualifications for any applicant, since they have an influence as to how they set your salaries.
Got it. And then 3D is the vouchers for the week. So we'll wait and see what those look like.
Yeah.
Moving on to department items number 4, CPED, approval of an interagency agreement between WSU and Thurston County.
2 weeks ago, you
For
briefly reviewed this item. This is the yearly contributions from the county to the Washington State extension for $141,239. And this agreement before you is just the instrument in order for us to participate with the money. I don't know if Mr. Stephen Bramwell will be here this afternoon, but I will certainly give the details of this item for you.
Next week.
Next week, thank you,
week, yeah.
next week, thank you. So this, the $145,000 pays for the director, the 4-H coordinator, the stormwater management extension coordinator, the working lands resource management coordinator, and for the 4-H assistant. And that equates to $145,237, which is included on the 2019 budget.
All right, anything? Moving on to number 5, PHSS, Public Health and Social Services, an MOU with Griffin School District.
Yeah, number 5A, we're going to take this out of your consideration, and the director within her preview will sign this. This is a $4,000 MOU, which really doesn't require formal action by the board. So we'll remove this item, and we'll continue on administratively.
Anything?
No.
Nope. It's $4,000. Do we need to put that in the motion?
No,
amount, no?
we're going to be taking this out.
Are you taking it out? I missed that. I'm sorry. I wanted to get that time back. All right, thank you. So that was 5A. Move on to 5B, and 5B is approval of Amendment 1, Safe and Active Routes to School Agreement.
Yeah, for your consideration, this is an amendment to extend the current contract that we have for the Safe and Active Routes to School project. and just to extend it from the current expiration date of September 2019 to July 31st, 2020. There is no really a dollar amount associated with this amendment. It's just the extension of the contract that will give staff more time to finish what is intended to do. And Chris Hawkins is here if you're interested in finding out the details of this program.
Go ahead.
I do have a question. You say no, there's not a dollar amount, but we have 25% adjustment possibly.
That's in case if additional grant money comes our way. And
Okay, this is a grant funded?
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Like a week or so ago, and we received, what, $4,000 more or something from the state for PHSS for something, and we had to approve that because it was outside of the 25%.
Yeah, and that's what, is you authorize a little flexibility. Sometimes $1,000 makes beyond the flexibility. So so the 25% is just give you a little more administrative flexibility.
Okay. Okay.
Chris, what's the kind of end goal here? I mean, I can imagine, but can you flesh out what this program will do?
Sure. This program
Who
is
might you
aimed-
be, Chris?
Chris Hawkins, Thurston County Public Health and Social Services Program Manager. And our Safe and Active Routes to School project is a collaborative effort with a couple of school districts, primarily in the South County. So we're working with Tenino School District right now. And this is to provide them with opportunities to encourage more walking and bicycling, active transportation in that community so kids and families have a safe and active way to get to school. We have enough resources in this grant that we're a recipient from Thurston Regional Planning Council to extend the work into the next school year, through the next school year. So that's what the amendment is about, is to allow us to continue the work with that school district and others into 2019, 2020.
Are you making like paper literature, or how are you promoting these?
It's a combination. We did an assessment last year trying to figure out what improvements would be valuable in that community to make it safer for kids to walk to school with their families. And we're following that up now with programmatic support, so encouragement efforts, presentations at the school, assemblies, and trying to get kids and families engaged in things like walk to school day, bicycle challenges, bicycle rodeos, and other traffic safety kinds of efforts.
Chris, you may highlight that also we have actual physical improvements.
Yes.
Shoulders and
Crosswalk.
crosswalks. So it's more than just programmatic. So you may want to highlight that.
While this funding doesn't allow us to do any kind of construction work, it sets the stage for that. We hope that we would be able to use the information we've gathered, for example, to be successful in additional project funding grant applications, as we have been with Thurston County Public Works in the Lydia Hawk Tanglewild neighborhood and soon Olympic View Elementary. So those are separately funded safer school efforts that we've been making with a couple of North Thurston School District schools.
Thanks.
Anything further?
Nope, good.
Nothing? Okay. Thank you, Chris. 5C, award and amend housing contracts.
So I'm going to pause for a little bit on this and give you some background. This is a
Thank you.
recent event, and so this item is for your consideration. The wording of the action may change. So let me frame the issue, and then Shelley and Gary will be here to answer any questions. Let me take you back to the action that you took to support the sidewalk organization for $20,000 related to the reentry, coordinated reentry for adults. And that was, the $20,000 was given to the Family Support Center because the Family Support Center had a contract with Sidewalk related to reentry efforts for adults. But also through the conversation, you may have heard that Sidewalk had other 3 contracts with the county. And one of those contracts is related to rental assistance. The rental assistance is about $116,000 that we have given to Sidewalk to operate and perform those activities. And the way we go through this process is activities needs to occur before we reimburse for those activities. So we don't do ahead of the activities reimbursement. So it has come to our attention that perhaps sidewalk may not be able to spend all the $116,000.
60 or 16?
116, 116. Because the full contract is $176,000, and that money is state money, and we're running the risk, and again, for losing $116,000 out of the 176, which is the due date is June 30th, 2019. So that's where we are. We have been in touch with Sidewalk, and unfortunately, they don't have the cash flow to really outfront the activities, which at this point, Interfaith Works is part of that process. And they have not, at least my understanding, they have not been compensated for the activities they have already performed. So that's where
who
we
hasn't,
are.
Sidewalk or Interfaith?
Interfaith is working with Sidewalk,
Right.
providing those services. As a result, the $176,000 contract. So far, again, they have spent $60,000, but the $116,000 will not be able to spend by January 30th, 2019
Oh, okay, so 176 is the total.
contract.
They're going to spend 60,
They have spent 60.
and there's 116 left under the contract to be spent.
Yeah,
Okay,
and we have
got
a
it.
deadline of June 30th, 2019 to perform those, and we lose the money. I mean, that's really the issue. It's from the state. We lose the money. We cannot carry over that. So that really brings to the surface some of the initial conversations that you had when you considered the $20,000 for the reentry for adults on the financial conditions that perhaps the Sidewalk organization is facing. So the result of this is this request is to take the $116,000 and reallocate it to those two organizations, the Family Support Center and Interfaith Works, to provide the services intended to do, which is rental assistance. And we do have contracts with both organizations, and we do have those activities included in those contracts. So it's just adding money to those contracts. And that's really the gist of this. I had a conversation with Shelley this afternoon, and that just came to the surface, and that's where we're presenting this for your consideration next Tuesday. Gary and Shelley are here to address any additional questions, but if I miss
No, I got a
anything
bunch.
on framing
I got a few.
the issue, please let me know.
I guess one of my questions.
Hang on,
would be-
hang on just a second. Will you introduce yourselves, and then we'll jump into some questions. Go ahead, Gary. Introduce yourself, yeah, thank you.
Gary Aiden, Public Health and Social Services.
And Shelley?
Sorry.
And Shelley Slaughter, Director of Thurston County Public Health and Social Services.
Thank you, thanks for being here. Go ahead, Gary.
What I'm wondering about is the request for money from Sidewalk that they came to us, and I guess some of the other jurisdictions.
Different activities.
Completely different activity.
Different
Doesn't
activities.
cover that at all.
No, the $20,000 was related to a reentry program for adults, and the overall contract is with Family Support Center. Go ahead.
The first money you're talking about was $20,000. The program is called Coordinated Entry. It's where all of the homeless folks come through Sidewalk, single folks, and are placed in various housing opportunities. That money is totally separate. As Ramiro mentioned, that our contract for that service goes through Family Support Center. We have a contract at your request, as you're directed, to give Sidewalk an additional $20,000 through the Family Support Center. That contract is done in place. It's coming back for Shelley's signature. This money here is funds that we will lose back to the state if we don't spend it by June 30th. And so we're trying to make sure that Sidewalk can maintain themselves, move forward with their revenue that we've given them, but not lose any money back to the state. So we're going to take it back, give it to Family Support Center, probably Community Action, and Interfaith Works to make sure all of that money gets spent. So that's our intent here, so we don't lose the money.
Does that answer your question, though?
Well, roughly, I mean, the end result is there's going to be those in need that get some help.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can I get Robin jump in real quick?
No, go ahead. if you've got a question, I'll hold.
Okay, I didn't know if it was tied to that.
So what I think it hasn't been made perfectly clear, but what I think I'm hearing is that sidewalks cash flow issues make them not the appropriate entity to spend this last 116,000. We can more effectively do that by shifting it. Would Sidewalk agree with that if they were sitting here? Are they supportive of this, or where do they stand on this?
We had this discussion with Sidewalk. They agreed to the plan. They in fact gave us numbers, and that's where the numbers that you see, that's what all of these came together for this AIS you're looking at now. Sidewalk agreed.
Okay, well, thank you for sorting this through, because this is super important.
And if Sidewalk gave you that information, 116,000, is that an accurate number?
We hope that they'll spend the money that they have left. That's the real key issue. We've obligated money. They're estimating they're going to spend about $5,000 a month between now and August. We're taking them at their word that that's what they're going to spend. We've looked at it. I'm really conservative. I would take back more, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to go with what the plan is that they've given us and move forward from there.
Okay. This side of the table, go ahead.
So, it was my understanding when they came forward and asked for additional money for the other program, and I completely understand that these are different programs, but what I thought I heard them saying is without this money, Sidewalk may close and definitely would stop providing that program. Now they're saying, oh, we can do without even more than what they were asking for because of cash flow issue. This does not make sense to me whatsoever. So, again, where is the analysis of Sidewalk's financial position that would show us that without this money, this company that we've just put, or organization, that we just put additional funding into, is going to be sustainable when we take this more than $100,000 out?
At this time, Sidewalk has not completed a financial audit yet, as they had stated when they came before you last month. So we are still waiting for that information. Some of the allocated funding will help that they have will help support them to complete that financial audit. One distinguishing difference between these funds and the other funds is that this is direct rental assistance, so it does not cover any of their operating costs, which I believe was one of the major issues that they were discussing last time.
So they don't retain any of this in administrative, they don't receive any money for administering this program?
Correct. And further your question on their financial status, we've requested that they get an audit. They have an engagement letter with one of our local CPA firms. I think the cost of that audit was $6,200. We have certain administrative money that we'll let them use towards that service. So hopefully within the next couple of months, we'll have a complete audit on Sidewalk to share with you.
I totally get that this needs to be spent. This looks like a much more effective way for us to spend the money that we have available for our community. I just worry that we went to an extraordinary effort to put money into this organization, and now we're taking even more out.
But we're...
Let me just get him to jump in real quick.
Yeah, and I understand your concern, but the issue of the financial situation is requires a larger conversation. And I think from my point of view, and seeing the current circumstances, we have an obligation to provide the services before June 30th and spend it. Because then the community will suffer by not spending $116,000. And that's, I believe, that's our first obligation as a county to provide those services. I do have a tentative agenda item on the March 29th on your planning session to further talk about the sidewalk. So we will not have the results of the audit yet. But it's other issues. They're coming along the way that you need to be aware. They are planning to have a big fundraiser at the end of the month, and I think they're banking on some of that revenue to bridge over. Commissioner Manson shared with all of us what Mayor Komet from Olympia did in terms of Tumwater. In terms of the financials in the last few years, and it was pretty evident as to how the program investment has gone down and the operating cost has gone up, creating that gap. So I think I believe, from my point of view, it's a systemic issue related to the financial situation with sidewalk. But again, I believe that we as a county will have an obligation to provide those services and don't lose money.
Right. I don't disagree with that. I just think
Okay.
that we need to keep our eye on this small organization.
Commissioner Minster, go ahead.
Well, I just thought that the answer to Robin's concern was that the money flowing backwards, it's a reimbursement. They're divvying out rental assistance and then they get reimbursed, and they're not relying on any of that money for their, because you're saying if we take this money away from them, they could collapse, which is what we were trying to avoid.
I'm asking,
But,
I'm
yeah.
asking that question. If it's all passed through and they don't use any for their administrative costs, then I can see where it wouldn't be affecting. But it's also interesting to me that there's $170,000 flowing through this organization that we don't pay them anything to administer. So I think that we got some review to do of our contract with Sidewalk. None of that would stop you from doing this action. We just got to pay attention.
So on March 29th, this is just one contract that we have with Sidewalk. We have other 2 contracts. They may need further discussion. At this point, the only action we're requesting for you to consider next week is related to the rental assistance program.
So I need to be square in my head. I won't be here next week to vote on this. And so that is, this issue right now that we're discussing is just to approve an amendment change, taking money from Sidewalk and giving it to FSC and Interfaith Works
Yes.
to fulfill obligation.
And I expect that there'll be a third there, and that will be Community Action Council.
CAC, okay. And
And again, this item we just developed this morning just to be able to have a conversation
Okay.
with you, because it was significant enough that I didn't want to wait until next week and expect you to take an action in the afternoon.
so even though it's not germane to this issue, I have a question to ask, and that is the financial audit that's going to cost $6,200 or $6,500. The money is it money coming from the county or a collective that's paying for this audit?
It is money from the county, from Fund Source 2163, and it is money from their fundraiser. It's a shared
50-50.
cost.
And the fundraiser's yet to happen.
The fundraiser is yet to happen.
Okay, it's almost like I'm waiting for my IRS return to come in, and that's my budget plan. Okay. Anything further?
No.
Anything further? No, okay. We're moving on then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6 would, of course,
Thank
would be
you.
the commissioner. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, Shelley and Gary. Thank you very much. Commissioner items and county manager update, and that will end that day. That will end that BOCC meeting. Then we'll move into public hearing at 3 o'clock for Public Health and Social Services, considering changes regarding the TST Advisory Committee.
Yeah, Commissioners, you will hear public testimony related to a proposal to change the number of advisory committee members to the treatment sales tax committee. And right now it's at 7, and the proposal is, I believe, up to 9. And for your consideration, we have the 2 actions that you may consider taking. One is to close the public hearing, and depending on the public testimony that you receive, you may consider adopting the proposal. If not, there's always, you can delay, depending on the public testimony received.
All right. Yes, sir.
And you won't be here apparently for that vote, so I don't know what the hurry would be.
The vote on.
Please don't exercise your.
No, I'm not going to.
No, I'm just saying, why would
But
we get in a hurry?
though we were talking about the.
And you don't have to.
There's no
This
vote
is
on
just
that.
an option.
Yeah, we won't be voting on that
Uh-uh.
until you get back.
That's right. Yeah, okay.
That's all.
That's entirely up to, the board.
Possibly.
Yeah,
We won't be
yeah.
doing that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
That's right, thank you. All right, so we are now moving on to proclamations and awards. Proclamations, we have 3 or 4 in front of us. 1, 2, 3, 4. For the agenda for April 2nd. Go ahead,
Good morning,
Bonita.
this is La Bonita Bomar, the clerk of the board. You do have several proclamations before you. 2 of the proclamations are actually coming under the Board of County Commissioners. And due to the timing of 2 of the items for the Board of Health, they will also be heard on April the 2nd, depending on your approval. The first proclamation that is in your packet for your review, and these are both still draft, is National Service Recognition Day. The second is National Equal Pay Day. And so that's for the Board of County Commissioners. And like I said, these are both very draft at this time, and then it gives you an opportunity to review them and make any corrections that you would like, or additions.
Okay. Commissioner Edwards.
Which ones have we done before or in common?
All of them.
All of them.
All of them? Okay.
Go ahead, Doug.
So I don't know if you guys met with a representative from YWCA regarding Equal Pay Day. Anyway, I met with someone named Gail Wooten, I believe, and she just wanted to talk about Equal Pay Day, and they've had this for a number of years, I think, but they're trying to maybe take it up a notch by sort of asking jurisdictions to think about. They've got an equal pay initiative where they have sort of 30 recommended actions. A lot of you look at, and I think they're things that we already do, but there may be there may be a request to sort of, hey, would we be willing to look at these 30 potential actions of employees and governments and consider adopting ones that we're not already doing, just kind of as a preview, because they're trying to, the proclamation's nice, but they're trying to move it forward and get people to take the steps. So I can circulate that document to you guys if you like. It's a kind of a one sheet, real easy to look at. That the Equal Pay Initiative group, I may be saying that wrong, but the work group under YWCA has been working on.
And
Yeah.
Gail is with YWCA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
This is something we've talked about in the past, you and I have, also about the county.
Maybe she can come on April 2nd, receiving the proclamation, and at that point, that will be a great opportunity for her to outline some of the initiatives.
But I'd like to see that in advance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that'd be
I think that will
helpful.
probably be a good setting for her to outline what the initiatives are, and then internally, we'll take that and see what else can we do.
Usually we have somebody that's lined up to accept?
Yeah.
Do we have somebody that was already prepared to be here?
I do not.
Okay, well, I'll check in with Gail then.
Thank
Let
you.
If we can get copies of that
Yeah.
list. Go ahead, Gary.
Do we have any allegations of either government employment or maybe county employment that is out of step with that philosophy?
Yeah, we shouldn't be.
Yeah, I wouldn't think we do, but that's what I'm looking. It
Well,
sounds like there's
let's
40
see the
things or 30
list.
things.
Yeah.
When you see it,
Yeah.
some of them
Yeah.
are things that, I'm sure we already have adopted. Other ones are, take a look at it. It's,
I guess in my career as a lawman here in the county and then working with county government, I've never known of a gender issue to affect pay, as long as they have the qualifications for the job, I guess.
Go ahead.
But maybe there is, I don't
So
know.
you are correct in terms of our classifications are set, and regardless who comes in, they get paid, compensated equally. But perhaps the argument is beyond that. Maybe it related to promotions, maybe related as to when somebody comes into the county, and I'm not saying this happened. I mean, I've heard this argument. Someone comes into the county employment, you start male at a higher starting salary than the female.
You think that's common here?
Well, I'm not saying that it's happening, but could be. And that's
Wouldn't
probably.
we know if it was happening? Couldn't we ask HR if that's going on?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Some of the initiatives that we meet to here that will give us the tools as to what areas we can perhaps we can improve, get some data, and then realize if in fact that it's a practice or not.
Yeah, because so some of it, I know some of the things are educational. Because, for example, with promotions, I mean, you wouldn't be able to, you know, you're always going to say, I picked the best person for the job. But if there's subtle, implicit, you know, sort of biases that are in there, you're not going to be able to catch that with data. So there's a lot of educational pieces that they talk about in order to try to get just people awareness of this, because that's really the way that you're going to have to combat it. You're not going to be able to show that a decision was based on some sort of subtle, implicit.
Right.
That's what we've talked about it.
So I'll circulate this, and you guys take a look. But and I'll connect Gail and see if she's be willing to participate in our proclamation.
Commissioner Edwards, go ahead.
I would just hope that as we conduct our normal business every day, we wouldn't have to wait until we do a proclamation, that we would be asking HR to be constantly reviewing that type of activity to make sure we're fair. I don't know. I mean, waiting until a proclamation date to do something,
No,
that sounds like bureaucratic business to me.
No, and I'm not suggesting that, Commissioner. And I think Commissioner Mensah hit on perhaps on the issue is the implicit bias. They perhaps may require some educational steps, not just to me, but all the managers, all the hiring individuals. And that's probably what perhaps may be some of the opportunities that we have, is having an education related to implicit bias as to how we make decisions in hiring.
Yeah, which includes other electeds.
Yeah.
They're hiring people too, left and right.
So I'm not suggesting that we have an issue, and I'm not suggesting that we have not addressed the issue.
What's interesting is that I didn't know is that equal pay day is set based on the day at which women's wages would have caught up to men's wages from the previous year. So for women, it takes them for 2018. They'd have to work all the way to April 2nd to then have collectively earned what men would have earned in 2018 during the calendar year. And they track that data and they move the date of equal pay day, and it just happens to fall on a date of our meeting. So
Okay.
Interesting. Anything further on that?
No, sir.
Nope, okay. Regarding the next two for Board of Health,
Yes, I have added these to the agenda for your review today because of scheduling. Board of Health is not having a board meeting until the second Tuesday of the month of April, and these two items would be more appropriate to be heard on April the 2nd. So that's why they're in here for your review at this time.
Okay.
Both are still in draft, again, but I want to make sure that you had an opportunity to see what's being proposed and to make any additions that you may want.
so if we were to do these next two, the National Public Health Week and Child Abuse Prevention Month, you're suggesting we would do that on April 2nd under the BOCC rather than the following week
Right.
for the BOH?
Right.
Okay, so that's why it says Board of County Commissioners on the bottom.
Right.
Yes.
Rather than BOH, okay.
And at the BOH, staff will highlight that proclamation, not necessarily for you to take an action, but
all right
highlight the
with you?
proclamation.
Okay.
It was just a matter of timing.
Yeah,
That was what.
got that. And you get to read them, I don't.
On April 2nd?
Yep.
That is right.
All right, thank you. It's 10:04. Let's do advisory boards and commissions, get that done, because that won't take but a minute.
Correct. The two items that you have to review today, you have reviewed this before. For the Planning Commission has one vacancy for Commissioner District Number 1.
Mm-hmm.
The person who has submitted an application is Don DeHaan.
And you weren't here last week, and I have numerous calls into Don Dehan, and I'm not receiving any return phone calls, and I understand he's on vacation out of state.
Okay.
Or snowbirding, whatever. And so I do have a call into his son to find out if Dad's on vacation, and I haven't heard back yet. So that's an action item right now pending.
Thank you. The second action being proposed is the reappointment to the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board, Casey Kramer, and he's been a member since 2016. And this is for the District 2 Commissioner.
So I'm getting lost in where, what is the proposed date of action on these items?
What Mr. DeHaan, we're going to hold. The proposed action
Okay.
is when you decide you would like to reappoint, if you decide you would like to reappoint Mr. Kramer.
Okay, you're just letting us know kind of what the
Yes.
inventory is.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have anything, Gary?
No.
Anything, Ty?
No.
And that's all that I have this week.
So if we were to move on with the reappointment of Casey Kramer, we would just give you a thumbs up now or a thumbs down or a thumbs sideways? Is that what you're after?
Yes, sir.
Does anybody know Mr. Kramer? I guess I just haven't had
I
an
don't.
opportunity to talk to him.
Yeah.
Have you?
I don't know him, no.
Okay.
Or
No,
her.
I-
Is Casey or he?
If Ben's is a District 2
Okay.
thing, I'll give him a call this week or something.
I do not know, Mr. Kramer.
And individuals currently, this is a reappointment,
Mr. Kramer is a reappointment
okay? And we don't know how long Casey Kramer's been doing this,
since 2016.
so since 16.
Did he take over a partial, how long are these terms?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't believe he took over, filled an unexpired term.
So maybe 3-year terms.
Well, you need more time?
Yeah. All right,
You do?
let me give him
Need
a
more
call.
time?
No, I mean,
I don't-
I
I'm
was
ready to
impressed
cover
by
it.
his having a civil and environmental engineering degree from WSU and a master's degree in civil engineering water resources. I mean, it seemed like pretty impressive qualifications for the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board. And he's reappointment, so I was okay with that.
I am too. So I have 1 thumbs up, 2.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
So
very much.
we'll bring it to next Tuesday for formal
you.
action.
For the 26th. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then start off with PIO when we come back, and the commissioners will have a chance to interact with our PIO and explain what's on our minds. 10-minute break, thank you. We'll come back at 10:18. Welcome back. We had a nice 10-minute break. And we're going to pick up the agenda again right where we left off at the PIO check-in. And I'm going to turn to Megan Porter, our PIO supervisor, to start us off. Go.
Good
Is there a
morning.
button to hit or something?
I had to turn it on.
Play.
Good morning. Sorry, there's feedback happening. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor, and I am here for you. What would you guys like to talk about this morning?
Okay. Ty, do you have anything for our PIO?
I know you've offered to come along on things that we go to that might be important for public information, communication purposes, so I need to be better at, bug me about that, please.
Okay.
'Cause I had a couple this week. If I'd thought about it, it would have been great to have you there. So
Okay.
I don't know how much time you have for all of that, but bug me so that I don't forget to do that.
Okay.
That's all I can think of.
Commissioner Edwards.
I believe it was this weekend on Channel 4, Eric Johnson did a special on homeless. It was a 1-hour show. And I wonder if there's any way you can incorporate that information into what we're working on today.
Ah, exactly where we were going to go with this. Yeah. Do you have an answer? And then I'll just jump in on the back of it or jump in now.
I haven't seen it, but I will go and
I
find
thought
it
it
and
was
watch
very
it.
good.
Yeah.
It was very informational. I'm hoping
Okay.
officials learn something.
Was it Eric Johnson of Wasac?
No, Eric Johnson,
Como.
he's a news reporter for Channel 4
Oh,
up in Seattle, and it was all about, the title of it is Seattle is Dying, I think is the title.
That was the title.
And it was just very well done. It tried to not be too critical, but point out facts, and then they even went so far as to go to the Eastern Seaboard somewhere to use an example of how they were doing business. But it just made sense, and it's kind of what I've been talking about for the last couple years, and I'm glad to see a news organization take it on.
Yeah, Eric Johnson
hope
is
we
not
do.
he's not a Russet or Yukon Gold, he's a commentator. Come on, folks, he's a commentator. Get it? Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Okay,
Is that all you had?
that'll do it.
that took me a
Where
minute.
I was going to go with that,
Oh.
Megan,
Got it.
if you have to
Totally
explain,
got
it's not funny. Where I was going to go with that is we're having an update on homelessness and the regional response and such, and I know you're going to be in touch with Keely and all the players involved in that issue, and Shelley Slaughter and such. And so I imagine there'll be work coming out, either a press release or some updates for internal and external to the organization on where we are with our regional response.
Okay.
Anything? Okay.
I thought you guys were gonna talk about it.
Well, we're gonna in a bit.
Oh, you're gonna, okay, good. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're moving into public hearing decision pending. This is the Mazama Pocket Gopher 2019 review process.
We'll get to you after this item. Yes, Commissioners, let me frame, staff should be coming here as they watch the video. But you received a briefing back in March 6, and it was related to the 2019 interim process as we go through the inspection. As we go through the inspection that we have done for the last few years while we process, continue to work through getting the habitat conservation plan because that will be the ultimate objective. So on April 6th, you received from staff 5 potential elements that you may consider changing on this process. The first item, whether you would like to consider going with the review, meaning the field reviews. with consultant and county staff, giving the public, the applicants, the option to go with the county review process or hiring their own consultants. There is a significant financial impact to those individuals who choose going with a consultant. For the fee, if the county staff was going to do the reviews for less than 5 acres, it's just about $500. And you heard during that testimony that perhaps a consultant may charge $500 per acre. So in that scenario will be $500 versus $2,500. Given the flexibility to the public, it does a couple of things. You know, whether they choose to hire a consultant, they can go, you know, do the report, and somewhat they will be ahead of the line. If they use county staff to do the inspections, they will go. They will be served as they come. So there will be a line behind it. So that was request number one. Staff recommended that perhaps going with just consultants during the 2019. My personal recommendation will be for you to consider going with both, given the options to the citizens on that. So that's number one.
Okay, are we going to move on that? Are we doing
No,
something on that?
not yet.
Okay.
Wait till it gets all done.
Oh, that's number
Dipping
one.
it over
Okay,
to
we're
you.
not, we're
So
gonna-
the item number two, you also heard some potential change was to add a cutoff date for as to when the consultants can submit their report. And that is really I believe it's more administrative, because they will give them a threshold as to when they need to submit their report in order for us to conduct inspections or process the permit. That was number two. Number three was to add the availability for a re-review of an occupied site, and the proposal for you was 5 years. So right now, when we go through the review with our consultant or county staff, and we see the presence of pocket gophers, then everything stops. Wait until the HCP is done, and that's really the only avenue the citizens will have. The proposal is to give the applicants the opportunity to come back in 5 years and re-review the site, and that's the proposal. In 5 years, considering that perhaps the subspecies migrate, you know, during that time. That's number three. Also, for your consideration is to add wells and utility work as part of the list of exempt projects, meaning they will not be requiring a review for the existence of pocket gophers. And lastly, the fifth item is to provide for large parcels, somewhat of a radius of 600 feet from a proposed development. So what is the difference? What we have right now, for instance, if you have a 5-acre parcel, or let's say 20-acre parcel, the process that we have right now is the inspection goes, and we'll have to inspect all 20 acres, right? Whether it's via a consultant report or county staff. This proposal, what it does is we see the footprint of the proposed development, in which is marked a 600-foot radius, and the inspection will be limited to the 600-foot radius. What is that going to do? Obviously, it's going to expedite the process of the inspections, but also what it will do is to the citizens is, you know, if they no evidence of pocket gopher with the 600 feet, they're ready to go, right? But if they plan to do something else down the road in the future, outside of the 600 feet, they have to come back to the county for an additional inspection process. And that is the big difference, because right now, an entire parcel can be cleared, versus the 600 feet, it will be just limited to the potential impact of the proposed development. Those are the 5 items the staff presented to you as a potential changes. You asked us to go back with and have some feedback from our attorney as to what will be the issues related to I believe, 3 items. One is where the 5-year review came from, when the review, what will be the exposure and liability to add wells and utility work as part of the exempt projects, and what is the liability related to implementing the 600 feet radius on a particular development. So I don't want to speak for the attorney, but I'll give you my interpretation of what he wrote. And really, is an exposure the county would like to take. And the exposure to liability is related to a third party. And even goes back to 2 years when we engaged the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And they provide guidelines, and through the guidelines, we follow that. And as soon as we deviate a little bit from the guidelines, perhaps it's at a calculated risk the county will take. But really, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife perhaps is not the one who is going to be exercising litigation against the county, perhaps a third party. And no matter how that is, the county still be liable because U.S. Fish and Wildlife will not co-defend the county on any actions. And that is really the gist of this. Go ahead.
Can I ask a preliminary question? Because you keep mentioning the county's liability, but my understanding is that the citizens are also, the citizens are not shielded because the county issued a permit. If they take endangered species habitat, they are directly liable for criminal as well as civil penalties.
If they get to the point of as a take, even without a permit, they're liable. Absolutely.
But even with a permit.
Meaning, if they go beyond the boundaries of the permit, they're liable. Absolutely, because that will be considered a take of endangered species.
But you're saying that the county's permit shields them?
From what is permitted.
That was not my understanding. I mean, I'd like clarification on that because that's critical to my understanding. I mean, it's one thing for us to take on liability. It's another thing for us to put our citizens at risk of being directly responsible because we made a mistake by not following the guidance of the federal government.
So my understanding is, for instance, if we issue a permit where we said we didn't find any, this is just me talking, okay? We didn't find the existence of any pocket gophers. So the issues permit. If during construction, now they find evidence of pocket gophers, they have to stop.
Hang on.
That was my preliminary question.
I thought you were going to rebut that.
I'm kind of waiting for, we asked for a whole bunch of
So that was the framing of that briefing. So
While you're sitting down,
Yes.
go ahead, Gary. You might add to this.
My concern is this morning, off topic, I guess, from this, I can see this is going to take some time to flesh out these 5 things. We're going to be talking about this quite a bit this morning. And I understand the auditor's office is here for just a presentation that's not going to take much, and it's going to not be a lot of controversy. I hate to have them sitting there spinning their wheels, because we're going to take some time on this.
Yeah, the chair needs to, yeah.
Well,
I know, I'm just
I
making a
understand.
suggestion.
And my understanding is this is going to take considerable time. I didn't know I don't expect we were going to take considerable time at this minute because it needs to be decided by the end of this month, by March 29,
Well,
decision date.
yes, the sooner the better, because those would be the premises in which we're going to be conducting the inspections this year.
Because this is going to take, in my head, this is going to take at least an hour to get through. And we don't have that kind of time to devote to it with the other agenda items that we have. But it looks like our next commissioner check-in isn't until March 28th, when I look at my calendar, and I don't know if there's another one before then. So this is going to take considerable time, which is going to preempt everything else, with the exception of the auditor's office. So do you want to take the time now to chew this up? Because if we don't do it now, which is going to take, I would think, about an hour, I might be wrong, but we kind of, let me get Josh now to weigh in on what kind of time frame are you looking at?
So it kind of depends on how much you want to chew on, I guess, as it were.
Josh Cummings, ladies and
Joshua
gentlemen.
Cummings, the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, and our legal counsel, Travis Burns, is with us, as well as Vince McDowell, our staff member who's leading this. I think the county manager did a great job of framing the 5 topics. Really, the request that the board made was to have our legal counsel weigh in on the potential risk and liability on those different options. From our perspective, again, how deeply you want to dive into this is on to the board, but as we relayed in our previous meeting, the 2018 review season was successful. We were able to clear the entire backlog, and we'll take whatever direction you like, but whatever direction you provide. But know that as we're building this, we want to make sure that what we've built is successful for the citizens and able to be implemented. But back to your original question of risk and liability, I don't want to speak for Travis, but the email that he provided essentially was, the more we change the process from what we built with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the more risk we potentially incur. So, I mean, A, 2018 was successful. B, any changes add risk.
Does that answer your question at all?
If I may add, you know, as you're contemplating how to frame this conversation, this is Travis Burns, Attorney General's office, prosecutor's office.
Attorney General.
It's been 2
Awesome.
years now. My goodness, that's not who I am. In any event, yeah, I'd like to just consider that if you want to get into a more deeper conversation about legal risk, I do recommend we go into executive session to have a full conversation. I think what is being teed up today, or at least was in principle, was just a basic word of caution to at least signal to you all, hey, status quo, you know, it has been what we've done. If you all are interested in delving deeper and want to have that conversation, then my recommendation is to do that in executive session if you want to have a more robust conversation. If you simply want to go through, look at the options and say, hey, we want to dig into here, you know, that may be a lighter approach, but, you know, think about that as you're thinking about how you want to move forward.
Ramiro.
Yeah, I was going to follow up that perhaps this conversation should be done in terms of the legal risks, because that's a liability to the county, having an executive session. So the next good time to have this enough time will be during your Friday, March 29th planning session.
How about the day before, the 28th? No?
The 28th I was planning to cancel because you're going to be meeting all day next day.
Okay. Does that give you sufficient time to kick things off if we did it all on the 29th?
Community Planning and Economic Development has great staff, and we will work to accommodate whatever direction
Without
we
question.
receive.
Okay. Because this is going to take considerable time to chew through.
I just hate to hold up another elected office that
Well,
we're asking to sit here for hours.
I always hate to do that, but I'm not going to rush an important topic either
No.
to accommodate anybody. Are you okay with putting it off till the 29th?
Yeah, I just, a couple of references were made to, did you send an email that I was supposed to have gotten them, kind of going through these issues, or no? I want to make sure I didn't miss something.
Internal CPED email.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's going to take that much time, but I do think there's some deeper questions that need to be asked in executive session. So, and then I think we could bang it out pretty fast. So I'm fine with that approach if we get them.
When I look at options 1 through 5, I'm okay with those.
I will set an hour on March 29th, which is a Friday,
Okay.
a week from this Friday. And that will give you, ample opportunity to go over these 5 items. I believe that probably really there's only 3 that you may really consider in terms of exposure and liability. But I do ask you to be prepared that after the executive session, you come out of the executive session and provide direction.
Got it. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Done. Thank you very much. And we'll see you on the 29th, if not before.
And that is going to be at Tilly campus, so you have to travel.
But that's major stuff. All right, change on the precinct boundaries. Please, come on up to the table, please.
So I'd also just say that we're very flexible.
Oh, you have to wait till you're sitting down and right in front of the microphone,
If you wanted us to
Diana.
hop downstairs and come back up later, we can do that also. This should just take a few moments. Our understanding is that you had a few questions on the precinct maintenance.
Will you introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Benson, Chief Deputy Auditor. And Mary Hall will be here this afternoon. The auditor's currently at a Wasaka Ledge meeting, so she wasn't able to join us for this meeting.
You gotta be right on it. Thank you.
Diana Benson, Chief Deputy Auditor. Mary will be here this afternoon for the 2 o'clock meeting.
Okay.
That you had some questions about precinct maintenance and our elections.
And who might be Tony
Expert.
next to you?
Tony Wiki is going to answer any questions that you have.
I have copies of our precinct proposal, if you'd like that now. I could hand that out to you and give you a chance to look that over. Typically, what we've done is after we've had the request for the public hearing, about a week before the public hearing, we've done kind of an in-depth review of these with the commissioners, and the changes this go around are pretty basic. I don't know, I hate to, just try and get everything in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But I understood maybe there was a question about the commissioner district boundary.
I think the question was, is there?
Yeah, is there a conflict or
is there
a
any
marrying of that up?
That's what the issue was.
Or regarding even a school district, could you have, as well?
The change to the commissioner district, there is no change to the actual boundary. Commissioner districts, their description is a list of precincts. That's how they're described in county code. And whenever we get rid of a precinct or add a new precinct, we have to update that commissioner district to reflect that. So if we added a precinct to Commissioner District 3, we would have to update that commissioner district description to include that precinct. And that's the change, is we're proposing removing 5 precincts in total in our precinct maintenance proposal, so we would need to strike those 5 precincts from Commissioner District 3, which would have no impact on the boundary. It just keeps the legal description up to date.
Can you go backwards?
Sure.
From that, so I know there were, this is based on the fact that Tumwater annexed lands, and then I assume the precincts can't cross jurisdictional boundaries, or?
Correct. The 2 pieces of land that the annexation in Tumwater were actually islands, county islands surrounded by city limits. So they annexed those into the city, so our plan, we plan to join those to the nearest Tumwater precinct.
They were their own precinct because they were islands?
They were.
So we just don't need those precincts anymore?
Well, technically they're gone. They're not county anymore. They're not unincorporated. They're now incorporated lands, so they have to be part of Tumwater. One of them had, I believe, 4 voters, and the other one had 11. So they're rather small islands, and there's still several that are left in Tumwater of the islands out there.
But they're gradually cleaning those up.
They are.
Yeah. So this is just administrative that we do annually, and if you would like to have a further board briefing, we're more than happy to do that. This afternoon's request is just to set the public hearing.
Well, I look at all the different various maps, and various, there's a ton of them. It shows X amount of voters here, and this acres, and and boundary moving, and voters here and moving here. The overview kind of spells it out a bit that per RCW, no precinct may exceed 1,500 active registered voters, and some of these other changes, but it doesn't just spell it out to me, because there's 285 voting precincts.
So the 2 Tumwater annexations, those will get rid of 2 precincts there, and then we're also proposing to consolidate 3 precincts up on the west side of Olympia. They're smaller precincts.
Up northwest, yeah.
Yeah, up in the northwest area of Olympia.
But I saw some other changes around boundary.
There are some boundaries. Most of this is all in the northwest area.
Okay.
It's always our goal to try and have boundaries that make sense. And if maybe you look at page 15, there's a good example of that. You'll see that Olympia 1's boundary crosses over across Division Street. There's a little part of Olympia 1 that's on the other side of Division, and Our proposal is the red dashed lines are the current boundaries, and we're proposing to move those boundaries to the white dashed lines, so the boundaries would follow division. Makes for a lot cleaner precinct, a little easier to understand.
Oh, it's the same with, yeah, on the south side, I see it.
And
Okay.
there's several cases of that along Division Street where pieces of precincts would move back and forth.
Putting a puzzle together, that
And
makes sense.
it's
I
all
see
an
that.
effort to have boundaries that make a little more sense. Also, if you look at page 16, there's Olympia 3. The current boundary is actually north of Walnut Road, and it's going through housing developments, and that boundary's been there for over 30 years, and things have changed up there in the last 30 years, so we're trying to make boundaries a lot more understandable for the voters.
Okay.
We are proposing to move that one down to Walnut Road.
Got it.
And then also grab it all the way out to Cooper Point.
There is, like on Olympia 6, there's a part of Olympia 6 that is on the east side of Cooper Point Road, and we're proposing that would move into Olympia 3.
You know, there's that one section, Olympia 18 and 20, up of Puget Street Northeast.
Yep, that's downtown. That's another case where the boundary is cutting through parcels. It's
Yeah.
just, we're just proposing to move it over to follow a street.
And so really today, we wanted to come and answer any questions about the process and have the public hearing set. And then we would be happy to go through the maps in detail in presentation if you would like at a later date.
Okay, thank you. Makes sense now.
Any other
Yep.
questions?
Tells me what I needed to know. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Questions? Good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much for coming. All right, now I'm going to take the legislative update and move that to the very end of the month. And we're going to jump right now into homeless regional response update. Because that's going to chew some time, because that's a topic that we need to know more about.
Yes, Commissioners. As a result of the February 7th planning the summit that you had in terms of homelessness and the issues associated with it, there were a couple of items that we staff needed to follow up with. One was bring for your consideration implementing an emergency ordinance related to allowing those activities in county properties. And this ordinance is before you. You will be, if you approve setting the public hearing this afternoon, you will be receiving public testimony May 7th. And at that point, you will be in the position to take an action related implementing this emergency ordinance. And also, you asked to start looking as to some of the pros and cons of potential mitigation sites that we can be part of the regional response. And staff has done a very brief, high-level pros and cons of two sites. One is the one located at the intersection of Martin Way and Carpenter, and the other site is located across the street from the jail in the Mudman area. And lastly, if you have time, I'd like to probably our homeless coordinator to provide a report as to what she has done since she was hired a couple months ago.
Okay.
Within that context, I may probably ask staff to come to the table and start working through the details of the emergency ordinance first. On your packet, there is a memorandum prepared by staff. Looks like this. Which includes a step-by-step what our ordinance is planning to do. So staff is going to walk you through the details of that.
Thank you. Joshua Cummings again, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. I have Jeremy Davis, again, our Operations Manager from CPED, and then Associate Planner Ian Lefcourt, who's, as directed by the board, we've taken what the City of Olympia did in their emergency homeless ordinance and looked at the menu items that we have within ours at Thurston County, and this is your opportunity to weigh in on those items. So Jeremy and Ian will enumerate the details and then receive your feedback to essentially draft what you'd like to have voted on this afternoon. So I'll hand it over to Jeremy.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Jeremy Davis, Operations Manager for Community Planning Economic Development. Take this off. I'm getting used to my reading glasses. So as Ramiro mentioned this morning, this would be an interim regulation that the county would be enacting. For interim regulations, we enact those under the Growth Management Act, specifically 3670-390. With these, the county can enact emergency ordinances or interim regulations for a period of 12 months with a work plan, which is what we're proposing today, is a 12-month period for the interim regulations. Following that 12-month period, the Board of County Commissioners can renew those interim regulations for a period of 6 months following a public hearing. So you come to near the end of 12 months, you hold a public hearing, and you consider whether or not you want to renew those interim regulations for an additional 6 months. This is the same process we followed for several years for the interim marijuana regulations, which we finalized in December of last year. And so in order to enact them to start with, you have to hold a public hearing either before you enact the initial interim regulation ordinance, which is what we're setting today, that public hearing, or you can enact it the day of and then hold a public hearing within 60 days. Okay. Yep. I know. So were there any questions on the interim regulation process or how we do that at all? I just tried to kind of stay high level on that. Okay.
No.
So the proposal for you this morning is to put an emergency waiver into our existing emergency homeless encampment regulations. As we indicated previously, these regulations were enacted about 10 years ago to address the issue at that time. We haven't reviewed them since then. You had your planning session last month where Olympia introduced their emergency provisions. So as directed by the board a couple weeks ago, we had staff here, Ian, go through and investigate that with the City of Olympia to see what they did waive, what they didn't waive, and then also look through our current regulations to see what we should probably waive or not waive. Or at least allow for waiver. So Ian Lefcourt did that, and by the way, he comes to us from a private consulting firm. He did environmental planning before, and he went to Rutgers University before that. And so this afternoon, he'll actually be coming to you for the first time to set the public hearing.
Awesome.
So anyhow, so what does this emergency waiver do or not do? We tried to go as expansive as possible while still retaining our public safety requirements in our code. So if you look on page 2 of the memorandum for interim regulations waiver process, first off, the temporary homeless encampments are already permitted as a temporary use administratively. So you don't have to worry about that. That's not a board approval. Currently, we do limit them to 6 months and 40 persons. Those two limitations, I remember Commissioner Menzer bringing that up a couple weeks ago. Those are waivable under the waiver we're proposing, just to make sure you know that. Well, the only thing we have listed here are things that we would not waive with this. And that is screening the portable toilets from adjacent properties and rights of way. They still have to comply with our building codes and regulations and fire codes. They have to provide our residents with a code of conduct and require that they sign that code of conduct so everyone knows what the rules of the game are when they choose to live there. And all residents, or the sponsoring agency, must use identification, and they must do warrant checks with the Sheriff's Department. I believe, Commissioner Edwards, you had brought that up previously. Our current regulations do require them to reject those sex offenders, and that's still left in place with this emergency waiver. And the sponsoring agency has to self-police and self-manage the residents. And these are all items that we thought we shouldn't be waived at this time, but that we would study over the course of the next year to see whether or not we want to include them in a permanent waiver process. So the general timeline for considering final regulations, after we get past that, if I may, is to study this over the spring of 2019 and the summer of 2019, work with various citizen groups and the health department on final regulations, and then bring those for planning commission review this fall with final consideration to the Board of County Commissioners after that. And that's how we propose to wrap it up. We'll see, of course, how it goes. It is a legislative process, and we We'll, of course, need to take time away from other projects to accomplish this work, and then also to work with the various groups and agencies on the final regulations. When we did these initial regulations 10 years ago, we did the same process. We worked with PONZA and other groups to develop those regulations. And I just remembered also, Commissioner Menzer, you had mentioned being able to have some permanent type structures there. That is something that you can waive on here, so someone could bring a temporary structure there, so long as it meets our building codes, onto the site to house like a manager or something like that. So Josh just asked me, what does it allow? And so this would allow us to waive all provisions in our current emergency housing regulations, except for the ones that we mentioned. So those are such things as the number of sanitary facilities they have to have, notification, public meeting requirements, parking requirements that we have.
These are the things. Wait, you're listing things that we can waive.
We can waive. These are things we can waive. Sorry.
That is on page 2 of the memo.
That's what we can't waive on page
Right.
2. I'm trying to scan the ordinance itself here to get the ones we can waive. There's a whole bunch of them in here. Let's see.
So can you, there's host agency and sponsoring agency. Can you just clarify for me what we're defining those as?
Well,
we're the host.
The way we use those in the past, the host agency is the people that own the property. The sponsoring agency might be the people that own the property, but it may also be the people paying for it. That's my understanding, at least.
So, and maybe you're kind of going that way where I was going to go later, and that is how we blend our interim regulations with a city's, if we were going to go in conjunction working with the city on some type of a mitigated site or so. Do we blend? Because I don't feel like yielding. But it's not up to me, it's up to the board. But how would these go together, work together?
Well, so it's all going to depend on where that encampment would be located. So if it's located in the unincorporated county, we would apply what regulations we have in place, and that's whether or not the city wanted to place it there or the county. If we wanted to go inside of the city itself, we would have to follow their regulations. And these would be applied. And if you're in the urban growth area, our county regulations would apply.
Okay.
Perhaps what you're referring to is how the coordination with any jurisdiction, the cities, could work.
Yes.
And I think it comes to the point of the actual location of the potential mitigation site.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have discussed as to how we can partner, because it needs to have an interlocal agreement with any partnering jurisdictions in terms of determining what I call an exit strategy. Roles and responsibilities. It's one thing allow a site to exist and within the county regulation. The next step is how we're going to be partnered with the jurisdictions as to who is going to pay for the amenities, who is going to manage the site, and what will be the next steps after we offer the site for a potential mitigation site. So this is just the first step. The next step will be the partnering with the jurisdictions to make sure that we'll have a regional approach to this issue. So it's a little local agreement where we need to key in.
And to include with that agreement the exit strategy.
Yep.
Yeah.
If we were only talking about Mottman, for example, that's in city of Tumwater, right?
Yes, sir.
So if that was the only one we were looking at, we would be using Tumwater's regulation, or would our ordinance apply because it's county-owned land?
With Tumwater's regulations would apply in that instance.
Okay, so this wouldn't we could do all of this and it wouldn't necessarily help us if Tumwater's got restrictions that are prohibitive.
Yes, sir.
For Mottman.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that is on point. And in fact, last week, Commissioner Hutchins and myself attended a meeting with the 3 jurisdictions related to this topic. And one of the suggestions was that perhaps the city of Tumwater may consider a similar ordinance in an emergency basis to allow that type of use. Because you're right, it is important. If we have the Mottman site as a potential mitigation site, if there are any issues by the city of Tumwater, this is the time to address them. And really, that is the.
This is a long process, and if their process is the same and we don't.
Right.
That's what I was going with this. Where's the conflict, or how's it blend? Okay. Oh, yeah, Gary, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Are you saying then if we put it in Tumwater that we would not be able to put any additional restrictions on those people using that particular encampment? And where I'm going with that, I want to make sure that any residents, I mean, this is what I would advocate for, that any residents that chose to stay there are either enrolled in some type of a self-help process or being treated for mental health issues, something. I don't want them just to have a free-for-all when they move in. And I want to make sure that they're positively ID'd by law enforcement so we know if there's sex offenders in there, if there's people with warrants, their criminal background. And it's not just going to be, to me, it's not just going to be a free-for-all. You get to move in there and kind of live willy-nilly with no restrictions. I want a structured environment for these folks to help them get their life back in order.
But we don't know what Tumwater has as restrictions or requirements, do we?
That's what I want to find out. I want to know, can we impose our restrictions in Tumwater?
No.
I don't know.
But we may not have to.
No, because
but if their restrictions are more lenient, I suppose not. I would advocate with the restrictions should be more stringent and help these people get some help, not just give them a place to stay.
So, and that will be probably outlined in a new local agreement as to how the operations of the site should be. Under the code, my understanding is the county cannot impose any county land use regulation to a jurisdiction.
I'm not saying land use regulation.
Well, but this is what it is. This is what it is. This is really what it does is allowed within in a specific land within unincorporated of the county to allow these activities. That's what it does. So, and the county does not have any jurisdiction to impose those onto a city.
If we did this under the auspices of the health department, couldn't we then impose our authority on a municipality that says, okay, we're going to make sure these folks are getting some mental health treatment, they're getting some kind of drug treatment, something is being done to better the situation for them and society?
That may be a further conversation with legal counsel.
Legal.
Because the Board of County Commissioners have, as a legislative authority, have authority over land use, fees, and everything else. The Board of Health does not have that authority. And that's what you're referring to.
Well, maybe we can do a blend of both Board of Health and Board of County Commissioners.
Robin has something. Do you have anything right now?
No.
Okay, go ahead, Robin.
My question is, the land use code aside, if the county should offer county-owned property, would that give us the opportunity to enter into an interlocal agreement with whoever was going to operate the camp as part of the condition of using our land?
Absolutely, and that is where we and that's where we have the opportunities. The interlocal agreement is where we define the roles, responsibilities, and conditions of the site, and that is where probably what I keep saying, an exit strategy has to be well laid out with the interlocal agreement, because perhaps this, if I with all due respect, this is the easy part for you allowing use of those activities and incorporators of the county. The difficult part is going to be getting with the rest of the jurisdiction and having a solid regional and local agreement that addresses this issue, not just on one side, but many. Mm-hmm. Who is going to be responsible? Who's going to pay for that? Who is going to maintain it? And what is the exit strategy? And what are the conditions of those sites? How law enforcement will be brought into the whole context? All that needs to be talked about with the jurisdictions. So the work is just beginning.
I'm willing to contemplate being more active, but just going back to the original ask from January, I think it was, Olympia, when they first came to us, it was like they were really trying to manage they were basically, if you can give us a piece of land, we'll run it, we'll manage it. Like, they just wanted us to contribute a spot. They weren't even asking at that time for us to, you know, to do any more than that. And again, we may want to do more than that, and the issue may have evolved, but I just wanted to remind everybody that they were desperate to have a spot to get folks out of downtown, but on a transit line, and, you know, a place. They just didn't have the ability to find a spot. So at a floor level, I just want us to keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
We can really help them by having a spot.
That was the reaction from a council member last week, exactly what you described.
Okay.
But unfortunately, government to government, we need a local agreement.
Yeah.
And that we cannot operate without a interlocal agreement on those terms. And that's
So-
what is going to take time.
You want to continue?
Yeah, I just wanted to do
Stop it.
Slapping
a brief
around.
run through again of what we're proposing to waive and not waive with this,
Yeah.
just to make sure.
I think you got interrupted, I think.
Yeah, so I'm just doing a very summary list here. I'm not going to go into great detail. So in general, we would have on there a possible waiver for the number and type of sanitary facilities. We would be able to waive the current restriction on permanent structures. The number of residents, the time the homeless encampment can remain in one place. Right now it's 180 days. That would be waivable. The number of parking spots we currently require for them, some of the locational limitations, the requirements for neighborhood meetings and the timelines in there for those neighborhood meetings and notices to surrounding property owners, and the minimum size of the encampment. Right now we have like 1,000 square foot minimum size for the encampment and a specific size for each of the individual encampments inside of there. And we could work with the sponsoring or host agency on what those should actually be. And any of those would be waivable to the specific circumstance that we're dealing with that site that the board selects for that emergency homeless encampment. And we'd work to do that to the minimum extent necessary. And in our Ian's conversations with the City of Olympia, that's exactly what they did on their emergency waiver, is they look to waive those to the minimum extent necessary. Now, what we would not waive are the warrant and sex offender checks that are in there, a code of conduct, our building and fire codes, minimal screening, and that's basically a very short list of things that we would look to not waive with this. Not going into great detail, of course.
And so to the county manager's point just a minute ago, this is the first step, and this provides that kind of baseline for what the ILA or the operations agreement would be dependent upon the property and the jurisdiction we're working with. So this is that very first step. At a minimum, these are the things we're recommending waive and not waive.
Okay. Anything?
No.
No, I don't think so. I mean, is there? I think you just said that and Ian said that that this would be harmonized or harmonizable with Olympia's requirement. If we were working with them, for example,
Yes, sir.
you know, I know they're not going to want to have two sets of rules for the two mitigation camps if possible. They're going to want those to be harmonizable, and you think that this achieves that?
I think this moves in that direction, yes. We did use Olympia's waiver as a base. Their legal counsel advised them to be able to waive more than what we did. We looked at what their record and what they did, and also reviewed it with our current building safety folks to see whether or not we could or could not waive certain things. And like, we can't waive building code requirements through this process, so we're not including that on a list of waiver items. Whether or not to waive the warrant checks and the sex offender checks, that's something that's up to the Board of County Commissioners. If you want that waivable, then please direct us to do so. We'll change the language to make that waivable, but that's up to your discretion.
What kind of building code requirements would come into play on this managed camp structural, the mitigation site?
If they're going to
scenario?
propose any permanent type structures, they would have to meet our building code requirements for entrance size, window size, ingress, egress. There may be some energy code requirements in there for those structures. As an alternative to permanent structures, we also allow yurts, one of the few jurisdictions that do that. But we also have certain code requirements for what they can and can't do on temporary structures and the type of materials that they can use. And I don't know every one of those specifics since I'm not an expert in our building code.
Yeah.
But I can certainly find that out for you.
Well, I'm just wondering if I mean, does Olympia's site have a permanent structure, or is it just the blue?
It's my understanding that they had a semi-permanent structure for the manager of the site, but they don't think they have any. I'm looking behind me here. I don't think they have any for the residents.
So that could be where we have a difference.
Mm-hmm.
They were allowed to have some kind of semi-permanent structure for their manager, and we would need a sturdier structure that conforms to our building code.
We could. I would have to find out from the city whether or not they
Or
required
you.
that structure. Yeah, where they required that structure to meet their building code. We'd have to check with them.
Gary?
Could they possibly have like a travel trailer or something? I mean, then it doesn't have any of those requirements, right?
I can check with our building safety folks on that.
And then when it comes to identifying these individuals, my concern is that we positively identify them. That means we just don't ask and they say, my name's Joe Smith. We either fingerprint them, somehow we positively identify those people as to who they are, so we know darn well that there's no child molesters in there that are going to prey on the community.
Are you working with the sheriff on this?
Yes, sir. So
Okay.
just to get a little more specific on that item for you, Commissioner Edwards. So our current regulations require that they do a warrant and sex offender check with the sheriff's department. And so it's going to be the identification that sheriff's departments may require with that, whatever that may be for it. And so they want to make sure that, of course, that individual isn't subject to arrest, or two, if it is a sex offender, that they register properly with the local law enforcement agency.
But it's not waivable.
That one's not waivable.
Not waivable.
And
at this
that's not
time.
waivable under this proposal.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we give this is our recommendations and our bottom line, but the sheriff's already established that, and it's already in here. That's not waivable. So that's done.
That is not waivable per your direction. Now, should the board decide otherwise during this process or through our development of the permanent regulations, we
Okay.
can modify that. But that was the board's direction 10 years ago to include that language, and we did work with the sheriff's department on that language.
Okay.
And so I'd like to just go back to a quick statement or a question from Commissioner Mincer. The word harmonizable. So it's kind of helpful to think of what we are proposing here is the sheet music, and the harmonizing happens at the ILA. So this is not the harmonizing. This is the sheet
Spell
music.
out ILA.
The interlocal agreement between whatever municipality we're working with. So we're not proposing the end all. We're proposing just getting on the same sheet music, and our staff has worked to coordinate the same sheet music.
So here we are in the middle of March, rapidly approaching the end, and springtime is almost here, and we're going to be deciding or considering the interim regulations in another month or two?
May 7th.
May 7?
That's when you have, this afternoon, you will have to set the public hearing for May 7th.
Okay.
And at that point, and again, you will have the two options for you to close the public hearing and to adopt the ordinance, depending on the public testimony they may
Okay.
receive on the same day, if you choose to do so.
And that's renewable every 6 months
Yeah. So
after the first year,
after
right?
the first 12 months, it's every 6 months, yes.
And if it currently, regulations say that you can only live on this site for 160, 180 days?
180 days.
For 6 months, would they have to move on before we renew it?
No, so that's one of the provisions that we're proposing to be waivable.
To be waivable,
Under the
all
current
right.
ordinance. However, for that waiver to go past 6 months, the board would be required to hold a public hearing to waive that, to further waive that. So to explain it better here, the department director, Josh, would have the ability to, at the outset, waive certain provisions. In order to go beyond that initial 6-month period for the encampment, not the ordinance, but the encampment, the board would be required to hold a public hearing and then decide whether or not to continue waiving it for that specific site. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say that was how the city of Olympia had structured their emergency waiver.
Okay. I don't want to have this get away from us and suddenly, oh, you have to move now because we didn't act with the public hearing, we didn't act in time. Josh wasn't here. I want to be sure that this is all taken care of ahead of time.
And that's the obligation from staff, just for the two of Commissioner Edwards and Commissioner Hutchins, that's similar to the marijuana interim regulation. So staff, we are not going to be bringing you as a proposal to renew an interim regulation when you only have a week to make a decision.
Right.
We'll make sure that we'll bring all the necessary steps so there's not a lapse in terms of the regulation.
Robin.
Having the interim regulation in place allows the board to consider what they may want to have for
As
a
a
permanent.
Yeah.
So at some point, you would get away from the interim process.
Right.
And then to address what I think you were asking, if a site has a waiver that goes beyond when the interim regulation ends, wouldn't that waiver continue in effect for its duration, even if the board did not extend the interim? Because it was issued at a time certain code was in place. It'd be grandfathered in.
Is the
if-
grandfather in effect?
Good.
So they
Okay.
would not be in a position to suddenly have to move.
Another good thing about going 12 months on the interim regulation means that next winter, we'll already have this waiver process in place. So if we do run into what we did this winter with the extreme cold temperatures and the snow and the poor weather, we're already going to be set up with a waiver process in our code, which we did not have this year.
All right.
So this will, if you enact it on May 7th, subsequent to the public hearing, it's going to be good until the following May. So it'll take us through the entirety of the next winter, in case we don't get final regulations completed by then.
Go ahead, Gary.
You made mention earlier that you couldn't waive building code issues. How is it that Olympia was able to waive building code issues? Could we make that determination? I mean, those little structures they're putting on, or even the pallets with tents, or the little houses, are they done in an emergency process as well?
If it's just temporary walls on, if it's like plastic or a tent or something like that, that may not require a building permit for that. There are certain types that may, but typically you won't need a building permit for it. For their smaller structures, we'll have to check with the city if they tried to waive building code provisions. And if they did, we'll work to do that same thing in the long run. But as far as we know, we can't necessarily waive those code requirements for a dwelling unit. But we'll check into that.
The tiny homes you're talking about?
Yeah, the tiny homes do have to meet building code requirements. It's my understanding at least.
Isn't there the possibility of like a shared kitchen, like a communal food preparation area?
Like the cottage.
Yeah, right. Those kinds of things you would want to meet building and fire.
Right, building and fire safety codes. And one thing, we do discourage individual cooking. We want to encourage those to be more centralized. There are some fire safety issues with open fires in and around the temporary structures that our fire departments, when we were working on our initial regulations, were concerned about.
Okay, do you have anything further?
Draft timeline, when it says fall 2019 Planning Commission review, does that mean completion of Planning Commission review?
That's what we're hoping for. It's going to be up to the Planning Commission to give their final recommendation and schedule their hearing, but that's what we're hoping for. So that's their review, public hearing, recommendation to the board.
Is that it? Anything further? Okay. Anything further to wrap that piece up? Okay, so thank you very much. Do you have more, Jeremy? Go ahead.
Yes, I do have one.
So should we wrap up our?
Well, we're going to move right into the potential mitigation sites next.
So just a final thought on the, so if the board approves setting the public hearing this afternoon, it will be based on this version
The resolution,
of the
or ordinance.
resolution. Leading to the public hearing, there may be some revisions to the language as we we need to coordinate with public health just to make sure
Okay.
we tie everything up. So, so you may be considering approving a little slight different language, but the gist is the same.
Okay.
So you'll see Ian this afternoon at the dais setting the public hearing.
All right. Mitigation sites.
Thank you.
Who's going to talk about mitigation sites?
Keely?
Keely?
And I know Shelley was like to comment.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Jeremy.
So attached on your packet is this, and this is again very brief,
What's it look like?
high-level assessment of the pros and cons of those two sites that we mentioned. One is the Martin Way and Carpenter Road intersection, and the other one is at Mudman property. So I will ask Keely to walk us through briefly on what she found so far, and there's more to do on this. But,
Good morning, Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services, Homeless Prevention and Affordable Housing Coordinator. So this is, again, as Ramiro has said, a very high-level look at and preliminary look at the two sites, one being at Martin Way and Carpenter Road, and the other, the Mottman property that you mentioned previously. I invited Colin DeForest, the City of Olympia's Homeless Response Coordinator, to come with me as he set up the previous mitigation sites to kind of have his perspective, as well as the Martin Way and Carpenter Road being adjacent to two parcels of land that belong to the City of Olympia. So in the Martin Way, obviously by this high level, if you look just a brief glance, the pros significantly are outweighed in the Martin Way and Carpenter Road site versus the Mottman Road, Mottman property. The Martin Way is right on a bus line, is in an industrial area, not residential. It's surrounded by trees, so that in the ordinance from 10 years ago, it mentions screening, that it's naturally screened by trees. It's not, I already said that, it's not residential, it's already fenced. There's lighting and cameras already in place. There's two-way access in terms of fire safety, evacuation, that sort of thing. But as it is fenced, it is also completely, the entrance and exit from this site would be something that could be controlled. It's very large. Speaking of permanent structures, there's already an office structure on site. It's a very small building that could operate as a case manager or some other kind of person could utilize that building. There's electricity, I'm pretty sure there's water. Colin DeForest stated that there is a potential for, where the property sits, there's this Thurston County property that's fenced. Directly behind that is the old shooting range, which is no longer in operation, that belongs to the City of Olympia. That unfortunately, the building itself it's toxic due to lead inside the building and on the property, but behind that, again, is another parcel of City of Olympia's land that houses Connex and dumpster, those kinds of things are back there, and Colin had stated that there was potential to consider ways in which the city could be involved even further along in the process for other kinds of temporary housing projects, so that was exciting. It is on a direct line straight into downtown, skirting BHR, skirting DOC, Department of Corrections, for folks that need to check in there. Also labor ready. I just found out that Evergreen Treatment Services just launched their brand new site, which is just over the fence from this facility or from this property. It can accommodate a number of types of housing. It's so spread out that it wouldn't have to look like so militant in the ways that the tents are structured or the whatever is in there is structured. They could be spread out a little bit. And there's also the potential for being really creative of what you could do in terms of micro enterprise were this to become something like a tiny home village. So lots of potential. It's pretty far out there. Supervision and mitigation, or supervision for any mitigation site is crucial. The current mitigation site in downtown Olympia has 2 hosts that are provided through the Union Gospel Mission who are living there 24/7. They have the tiny homes. That's the semi-permanent structures that are placed there. But they also, 1 block away, have Union Gospel Mission. They also have just a couple blocks away City Hall, where the crisis response unit, the ambassadors, the clean team, Colin DeForest and his team are residing. So in any given moment, and community care centers are just 1 block away. So you have lots of support coming into that mitigation site. So just to consider that into the future, with a property that's quite a distance away from all of those built-in supports, that would be something to consider. How would that mitigation site or whatever it is supervised? And so the line of sight would be the only other thing I would say would be concerning because of that empty building. The probability of it, people wanting to squat in there is something to be considered. For the Mottman property, it's a very different property. This property's already not paved, but it's been raised. It's in use currently by a department from the county, which I can't remember who was out there at the time. Whereas the Mottman property is it's very wild. It may have been a fill site for a while. It's not fenced. The land is very wet. There's only one road in, access road in, and then access road is the juvenile detention's access road. It's in total visibility of both jails, so the juvenile detention facility as well as the Thurston County Jail. So, which includes the garden site for where the young people come out and do the garden project at juvenile detention, just right there, complete vision, visuals of that. They also have lots of hillocks where it would be really difficult to have line of sight. Prepping the ground would take quite a lot of time, much less fencing it or providing lighting or getting electricity out there. So it is in an industrial area and it's not residential. The bus line also, I believe the last site or bus stop that would get close enough would be at the family court and juvenile detention center, so there'd be a lot of traffic coming in and out, right in their turnabout there, and so that would be, I don't know how they'd feel about that. So those are the just the preliminary views of those two properties. The interesting interjurisdictional regional photo of a site that is the property is owned by Thurston County. It lives in Lacey, and it's in partnership with City of Olympia. Is an interesting story to tell in terms of regional response. And I also went and visited one of the other camps that's about to be swept down in the City of Olympia at some point. About 40 more people that will be moved on before there's a second mitigation site. So just kind of punctuating the emergent nature of the situation.
Wow. Which begs the question, where's site number 3 and 4?
Right.
Okay. Do you have anything, Gary?
I guess not at this point.
Sorry.
You said this Martin Carpenter's in Lacey?
I believe so.
Lacey UGA.
Lacey
Yeah.
UGA.
Okay.
And just another con on the Mottman list is just the response that I've heard from the City of Tumwater about feedback they've gotten in the past from and I know there's not residences, but there's businesses in that Mottman industrial area that at least the mayor of Tumwater expressed to me that there had been pushback on some other projects and proposals and things there, and he was not predicting an easy path to siting there.
And there are some residences on the other side of Mottman or whatever. I don't remember the name of the road, but if this is juvenile detention, that road.
That goes up the hill.
Yeah, there are some residences. Whereas at the Martin Way and Carpenter Road, not for quite some distance.
You've given some good cons for the Mottman property, and the people I spoke with in Tumwater never pointed any of these things out other than not in my backyard. So this, at least having some concrete steps for a marsh makes sense. But I hope we would be able to find something else out in the southwest end of the county. Going back to the Olympia, the Martin Way and Carpenter Road, what would it cost? Do you have any idea what it would cost to reclaim that property and get the lead out of the building and out of the soil? Because we wouldn't be able to use it until that got and cleaned up.
I don't know. I could ask for sure, but I'm not aware.
Okay, and I'm asking you this, Keely. Don't answer it.
Okay.
Well, yeah, you answer it. I don't want to know what sites, but do you have a number 3 and number 4 in your head? You don't have to give it out. I don't want you to.
Perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow. County Manager.
Commissioners, for you, Chair, considering that we have the Sheriff's Office, attorneys, and everything else, they're here for the executive session. Maybe Keely can come back next Tuesday for her report. And and maybe moving the flex unit and the reorganization proposal, depending how long the executive session goes, then you may consider having that, or maybe I can move that for next week.
Yeah, we'll do that. All right, thank you very much, Keely.
Thank you, Keely.
Go find some other spots.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to move into an executive session?
Yeah.
All right.